All right, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you for being here. This is our kickoff webinar for the Lawns to Legumes Fall Grant Season. We are excited to have you and excited to see the pollinator project you'll create. So if you have any questions throughout this presentation, you can use the Q&A feature, which is located on the bottom of your screen. If you just click that Q&A button, you'll see the message box pop up and you can type in your question. You can also upvote questions from other participants if you have the same question. And you can do that by clicking the thumbs up icon next to the question. And that helps us know what the most popular questions are. If your question is not answered in our Q&A box today, we will be addressing the most popular ones during our Q&A session next Tuesday. And then both this webinar and next week's Q&A session will be recorded and emailed to you, as well as posted on our grantee guide. So if you're not able to stay through this whole session, we'll be sending that to you later. So before we go into today's content, I'd like to just give some introductions. So throughout the course of your grant period, you'll see that you're getting communication from a couple of different organizations. And to clarify that a bit for you, the Lawns to Legumes program is a program of the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources, which is a Minnesota state agency focused on helping landowners enhance conservation on their lands. And then the Board of Water and Soil Resources has contracted with Blue Thumb, and Blue Thumb helps manage the Lawns to Legumes program. So they'll be the organization working most directly with you as a participant. Blue Thumb is a statewide partnership that helps people reduce runoff and improve water quality and help out pollinators. So most of the emails that you'll be seeing are coming from Blue Thumb. And lastly, Blue Thumb is an education program of Metro Blooms, and Metro Blooms is a Minneapolis-based nonprofit, and their mission is to partner with communities to create resilient landscapes and foster clean watersheds. So while our program staff work for all of these organizations, we're all working together on the Lawns to Legumes program. And a few of us will be presenting today's webinar. We also have Graciela and John who are helping in the Q&A. To introduce myself first, my name is Megan Reich. I am the Communications and Program Manager at Metro Blooms. I help with Lawns to Legumes communication and participant support. And I will pass it on next to Alexandra to introduce herself. Alexandra, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm dealing with some technical difficulties on the back end with one of our interpreters, but my name is Alexandra. I am a Lawns to Legumes and Special Projects Manager here with Metro Blooms, and I work especially with our coaching staff throughout the grant season. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Dan Shaw.
All right, thanks, Alexandra. I'm Dan Shaw with the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. I'm the Senior Ecologist and Vegetation Specialist with the agency. I've been working with Lawns to Legumes since the beginning in 2019. So we'll talk about the introduction of the program. I mentioned it started back in 2019, and right from the beginning, the program was focused on building a movement for pollinators. We had initial funding from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund through the LCCMR, and more recently, we have funding through the State General Fund. And this program has been focused on building a movement for pollinators through residential landscapes and involving as many residents around the state as we can. You can go to the next slide. I'm not seeing the next slide, Megan. Did you advance? Or maybe that's part of our technical difficulty. I'll keep going. We'll
Are you
catch up on
seeing
the slides.
are you seeing the 3 components slide right now?
I'm just seeing the first intro slide, our cover slide.
Okay, let me see if I can work on that.
Okay. So we have a focus on native plants with this program, and so that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. And there's a few reasons that we focus on native plants. One is that they provide many environmental benefits, and our native insects and other wildlife have evolved along with our native plants. So we reimburse for native plants with this program. And with some of the environmental benefits, they increase the soil health due to their deep roots. So that's one of the important benefits of the native plants, and that helps increase water infiltration as those deep root systems get down into the ground. This slide is showing some of our bigger concerns that we have, and one of them is insect declines. It's estimated that around 40% of insect species are declining across the world, and insects really make up an important part of our ecosystems as a base of our food webs, and pollinators play a really important role with supporting our ecosystems, but also our food systems. And native plants essentially support these insects. They're food sources for the insects that are playing this important role. Next slide. One of the species that we focus a lot on with this program is the rusty patch bumblebee. Its populations have declined around 80% over 20 years. So a really significant decline. That's similar for the monarch butterfly. We think it's similar for many of the roughly 508 native bees that we have in Minnesota. We think there's a lot of decline happening. This species was listed as endangered in 2017 and named as Minnesota state bee in 2019. Many of its remaining populations are in urban areas, and that's part of the reason that your plantings can play a really important role in supporting this insect. A few other needs of this species are nesting sites, blooming native flowers, protection from chemicals, insecticides, and fungicides, and connection to high-quality habitat. And a few other benefits of native plants. So supporting soil health and stabilizing soils, increased stormwater capture, food for pollinators, creating wildlife habitat. So we're benefiting bird species, which are declining as well. Native plants are also resilient to drought and environmental challenges, which have been important over the last few years, and they beautify our communities. We wanted to talk a bit about cultivars. So we don't fund cultivars through this program, just straight native plants. Cultivars, nativars, and hybrids are genetically modified for aesthetics or other traits and usually provide limited benefit and nutrition for pollinators. So they're not reimbursable for the Lawns and Legumes program. So with identifying cultivars, cultivars usually have single quotes around their name. Hybrids will have an X in their name. So it's important to check the plant tags. Look for whimsical names because those will be cultivars as well, and shop at native plant nurseries. We do have lists of native plant nurseries through the program for a reference for places that you can go for native plants. So examples of cultivars and hybrids would be Gaillardia Spin-Top Orange Halo has the whimsical name. Spin-Top Orange Halo Blanket Flower, so another whimsical name. Gaillardia X grandiflora has an X in the name, so that's a hybrid. And there's an example on the right side of just a native plant, butterfly milkweed. Its scientific name is Asclepias tuberosa, so that's a genus and species. And it doesn't have a whimsical name or X in the name. So that, and that's compared to the one on the right, which does have an X in the name. So pay attention to that as you're purchasing plants. Just want to thank all of you for participating in this program too. You're playing a really important role in supporting pollinators. And I'm going to turn it back over to Alexandra, I believe.
That'll be me, actually. So thanks, Stan. We'll get more into what purchases are eligible for the program later on. But to back up a little bit, we're going to just step through kind of the process of working with your Lawns to Legumes grant. So the first step that you'll need to take, if you have not already, is to accept your grant award. And you can do that by filling out Blue Thumb's confirmation form. And that confirmation form is linked in your award email that was emailed to you from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. The deadline to submit that confirmation form is July 31st. So you have a couple weeks to decide if you want to accept your award if you haven't yet. And next, we're going to move on to some of the steps to planning your project. So there are 4 project types that are associated with Lawns to Legumes that you can do to receive reimbursement for your project. These include native pocket plantings, pollinator beneficial trees and shrubs, pollinator meadows, and then pollinator lawns. And you're welcome to do a combination of these different types as well. So I'm going to give a quick overview of each project type next. So native pocket plantings are just small plantings that can come in a variety of shapes and sizes. They can be as small as just a 10 by 10 foot garden area, and that will offer pollinator habitat throughout the year. So they can also be bigger if you'd like, but we encourage you to start small, especially if you're new to native plant landscaping. And pocket plantings are also the most popular project type for Lawns to Legumes grantees. So it's always a good starting point if you're newer to gardening. Next up is pollinator beneficial trees and shrubs. This is our second most popular planting type. These can really add another dimension to your yard and garden. They're great because they provide really important early season forage for pollinators. Especially those kind of flowering trees in early spring really help those bees that are coming out of hibernation after the winter. Some other considerations are that some native trees have edible fruit. They can provide shade for your property, autumn color, and then just more structure to look at in your landscape during the winter as well. The next project type is the pollinator meadow, which is essentially a larger version of the native pocket planting. Pollinator meadows are a large planting of diverse and native plants, and you can create one by doing it all at once via seeds, or you can start with a smaller garden this year and expand a little more every year. Especially for these larger projects, we recommend having a mix of grasses and flowers. Even in a smaller planting, think about incorporating grasses in addition to flowers. They're a great source of habitat for pollinators in addition to kind of complement the nectar and pollen that our flowers, our native flowers, are providing our pollinators. And then lastly, we have the pollinator lawn project. So a pollinator lawn could be a good project for you if you have a section of your yard that you want to be more open, or you don't necessarily want taller plants in it, but you still want something that's more pollinator beneficial. Pollinator lawns typically consist of a mix of low-growing fescue grasses and then some pollinator beneficial flowering species. And fescues compared to turf grass are a lot more deep rooted, so they require less watering and less mowing once they're established, which is really nice. So after you've thought about what project type you want to pursue, another important part about planning your project is considering what native plant species you'll be adding to it. It's important to kind of spend some time with this because you want to choose plants that will thrive in the specific conditions in your yard. So some of the main questions that you can consider is how much sunlight is there? Do you have an area that gets mostly sun through the day, or do you have some more mature trees? And it would be better to choose plants that are suited to shadier conditions. You can also think about the soil moisture on your site, if it's typically drier or stays pretty moist, because some native plants can do better in different soil moisture conditions. Um, and then the last bullet point, or the third bullet point there, is really important, which is thinking about the blooming time of the flowers that you choose. So most of our Minnesota native plants often bloom in the summer, but it's also important to include some native plants that bloom earlier in the spring and later into the fall, so that there's resources for pollinators at that beginning, ends, and tail ends of the growing season. Um, and we have some good resources for finding plants that'll work for your project on the Blue Thumb website, which is bluethumb.org. One of those is our plant finder. And then we also have some plant lists, and we'll be going over those in more detail later in this webinar. So thinking about kind of planting layout and design is another fun aspect of starting a new planting project. As I mentioned earlier, try to think about going for a mixture of grasses, flowers, and shrubs if you have space for some shrubs. It can also be useful to keep your species together in groups. That makes it easier for you to identify them and kind of tell them apart from weeds when they're growing in. And that also makes it easier for pollinators looking for flowers to forage on. Also consider putting shorter plants in front. So whatever vantage point you'll be typically viewing the planting from. Some of our Minnesota native plants can get quite tall. So you kind of want to think about maybe like a family photo with the shorter people in the front, the taller people in the back, just so it's more pleasant visually for who's going to be walking by. And we do have a number of sample design templates for different types of yards available on the resources page on our website. And then lastly, just a little bit more about design. So when it comes to native plantings, as I mentioned, some plants are tall. A lot of folks consider these plants more wild looking, but putting in some thoughtful design considerations can help make your pollinator planting look intentional and helps people understand the purpose of your project, which is providing habitat for our Minnesota native pollinators. So one easy tip is to just incorporate some edging materials around your project, like bricks or stone or other types of fencing that help frame your garden. And edging is a reimbursable expense, so you can get reimbursed on that. You can also think about other additional elements like borders or paths. And we like to call these things cues for care. Again, so people see that you're not just making any old garden, it's a pollinator garden. And that'll help people get excited about what you're doing and hopefully kind of spread the word around your neighborhood. And then just one more mention is that you will be getting a Lawns de Legumes yard sign once you complete your project, and that can be another great way of communicating the intent of your project. So I'm going to pass it on to Alexandra next, who's going to talk a little bit more about installing your project.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. I will just jump in really quick to say for some reason I can't start my video, so you all get to stare at this beautiful picture of me instead. But I'm just gonna go over some of the quick basics. Some of the larger details around installing projects will come in the upcoming project-specific webinars, but we can go ahead and go to the next slide, Megan. So one of the most important things for having a successful project is actually making sure that your project site is properly prepared. And there are a few different ways to do that. We're just going to go over some of the kind of basics around them today. Number one most important thing, if you are working in an area that has a lot of weeds, that weed pressure is going to remain unless you do the work ahead of time to clear them out. So if you're working in a site, say, that has full sod and the lawn is fairly weedy, you might need to do something a little bit more intensive, like removing the sod. So in one of the pictures here, we are showing a sod kicker, a manual sod kicker, which you can use essentially to cut underneath the turf grass, and you then roll up that sod and take it away. I will say that that is a very intensive way to prep a site. It can also be a little bit challenging to figure out what to do with that turf grass at the end. So you want to think about how you're going to manage that, if you're going to use it somewhere else on your site, or if you're going to be able to dispose of it at a yard waste site. Once you have removed the turf, a lot of the times the soil underneath the turf grass area is very compact. And so you want to think about maybe loosening that soil, maybe turning it. Typically, when we're working on projects, we'll turn about like 6 to 9 inches down, and then rake the soil back into place so that it's even again, you have an even surface to work on. Anytime you disturb soil, however, you are going to bring the seed bank up to the top. So there might be weed seeds in that soil already that are going to want to sprout unless you cover the soil. So we strongly recommend using mulch or another weed suppression practice, like erosion control blankets or weed suppression mats. If you are going to use mulch, you can use bagged mulch. You can get mulch in bulk. The biggest thing that we recommend is looking for a mulching product that is often talked about as shredded mulch or double shredded hardwood mulch, because instead of floating away when you're watering or having some sort of rain event, the mulch is going to bind together to stay in your garden site. So it'll just preserve your mulch and create just a better weed blocking surface. We get a lot of questions about mulch. You can get this from garden centers. You can buy it in bulk from different landscape supply companies. But remember, using mulch that hasn't been treated with chemicals or dyed is going to be the best product for supporting your native plant, supporting your soil as it breaks down as well. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So another option, and this is a really, really great option, if you think of it ahead of time and give yourself enough time to do this, is sheet mulching. So basically with sheet mulching, what you do is you cover the area that you are going to be planting in with, say, like a layer of compost and then cardboard or layers of paper like newspaper, and then mulch on top. And that essentially creates like a composting bed, essentially. All of that is going to break down. All of the turf grass underneath that area is going to basically suffocate because it's not getting any sunlight. And you will be not only like regenerating that soil to have like a really good kind of broken down organic material to plant into, but it's also a lot less like intensive work than manually cutting the sod. So sheet mulching is a really great option. We do, as an eligible expense, cover, say, like getting cardboard, or sometimes people will get like butcher paper kind of sheets that are made for doing this kind of suppression. And that is an eligible expense if you're going to do this option. I would just encourage you to look into some additional details about how to do this method correctly. And the guide that we always recommend for learning more for these different preparation styles is the Xerxes Society Guide to Organic Site Preparation, which is linked on our website. Another option that you will often see is solarizing an area, and that is typically done by covering the area in a large piece of clear plastic, and you use the heat of the sun to essentially cook all of the weeds. The clear plastic allows seeds to still germinate and then be killed off again in the heat. But this method, I will just warn everybody, there are a lot of steps to doing it right, and it is not the best method for a fall planting. So we mention it because you'll see it, but you probably will not have the time to do this well, to kill off all of the weeds in an area, just because we're through the majority of our summer growing season already. But if you have any questions or want to learn more about some of these different preparation sites, again, take a look at that Xerces Society Guide to Organic Site Preparation. It is an excellent and very detailed resource. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this, we will go into a lot more detail around installing different types of projects like trees versus plugs in our project-based webinars. So if you are interested in learning more about that, highly encourage you to either come to those live or watch the recordings when they come out afterwards. We'll have a little kind of calendar with a reminder of the dates here at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. One of the big questions we always get is for this fall cohort season is like, can I really plant in the fall? It's something that a lot of new gardeners are very nervous about. It's something that a lot of experienced gardeners haven't tried before. So we just want to give you a couple of reasons why planting in the fall can be really an excellent choice for native plants. Number one, new plants are going to deal with a lot less stress from like heat stress from summer temperatures. So because of this, the plants, not only they're less stressed, but they can focus some of that energy on growing really healthy root systems. And that is the primary thing you want when you're installing a new native plant. Native plants are well known for taking some time to come to their full potential. And the thing that is going to move them along towards that is having a really strong foundation in their root system. So planting in the fall is just like a perfect timing for the plants to focus on that. You'll be more likely to see them come up again in the spring. They'll just be healthier plants. The other thing about the fall is that you won't need to water your new planting as much. A part of that is because they're experiencing less of that heat stress. A part of that is that most of the growing season has already passed. So there's just physically less time between when you planted and when the ground is going to freeze and you can stop watering. And another piece of that is just our falls tend to be a little bit wetter. This year, as an exception, it's been wet all the time, but it will just be less stress for you in general, having to focus on that. Finally, we just want to let you know, like Minnesota's fall planting season goes into October easily. Typically, you want to have plants in the ground. Like if you're planting plugs or a tree, you want them to be in the ground several weeks before our expected first frost. And that is just, like I said, so that they can develop some of those healthy root systems, let their roots kind of recover a little bit from the transplanting. But that will just give them a good base for getting healthy, getting established, coming back next spring. And then our grant season, you will note, goes well into November. And a part of that is because you can also do dormant seeding after the ground has frozen. So we will talk about that more in future webinars, but I just want you to know we have a ton of success with planting in the fall and actually highly encourage it. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So just quickly taking a look at native pocket plantings. You've already prepped your site. You've removed any turf, any weeds, anything that's there, and you've mulched the site. Highly recommend you mulch the site first before you plant. And that's just because when you're planting little plugs or little plants, it is very hard to spread mulch around them individually. It can be a lot easier, especially if you're working in a larger garden site, to just pull the mulch aside, install the plant, and then put the mulch back around it nice and snug. We have a great planting plugs video that I'm sure we'll send out in future emails, just so everyone can kind of get a sense of what it looks like to plant a plug. But I promise it is not too intimidating at all. When you are going to go plant, take the time to lay out your plants ahead of time to make sure that you have enough and you know where they're spaced and everything looks just how you want it to look. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. When you're planting trees and shrubs, there are specific ways that you want to plant trees and shrubs to make sure that they thrive after they've been planted. One big thing is that you want to dig your hole at least as deep as the root ball. So sometimes that's about as deep as the container. Sometimes it's a little bit less. And then you want it twice as wide as the root ball. And that just gives a lot of space to loosen up that soil, get those roots so that they can grow laterally. Trees that have been grown in containers, especially, oftentimes will have roots kind of circling around. And if you leave those in place, they can actually eventually strangle the tree. So we do something called box cutting, where you cut each side of your root ball so that you have a square instead of a circle, and that will just make it so that the roots are encouraged to grow laterally. When you put the tree or the shrub in your hole, you don't want to plant it too deep. Typically, you want the root flare, which is the little part of the tree that kind of goes out like a little J at the bottom of the tree. You want that just slightly above ground level. You want to be able to see that. And then once you are backfilling, putting dirt back into your hole, you want to make sure to do it pretty firmly. Make sure you're not creating any air pockets. If there's a kind of an airy root structure, you'll want to make sure you're getting soil underneath that to hold the tree up and in place. And then if you water while you're filling in the hole, it's a lot easier to kind of find those air pockets. They will tumble in on themselves and you'll get enough soil into that space. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. A pollinator meadow, one of the other options for projects here. The biggest recommendation we have is to do any of these projects bit by bit. So you can create a pollinator meadow by doing multiple pocket plantings next to each other over time. So say in this grant period, to not overwhelm yourself, you decide to just do one pocket planting, and eventually you want your entire lawn to be taken over into a meadow. Next spring, you could add another pocket planting. And that's just a little bit more of an accessible way to take on one of these projects. If you're doing this all at once, like you have acres that you're wanting to cover, a lot of the times you will end up doing this with a seeding or with very small plugs. And that is just for cost reasons. You want to check with your supplier of your native seed for specific planting instructions, because some of the seed mixes, number one, there are seed mixes that you can get that are just wildflower seeds. They may not be Minnesota native seeds. So you want to start with making sure your mix is definitely Minnesota native plants. But then some of those mixes might have different seeding instructions, seeding rate, when is the best time for this to be laid down, things like that. So check with your supplier to make sure you know what the best practice is going to be. Know that if you're planting from seed, it will take a long time for it to come to its full potential. A lot of times we talk about native seeds taking at least 3 years to establish and before they might even bloom. So just be prepared to have a little bit of a wait and know that your meadow is going to change over time. Some seeds come up very quickly and bloom early. Others might take a little bit longer before you get to see them in your meadow, but it's a great process to kind of follow. Protect against erosion in any of these plantings, but especially if you're, taking a vegetation off of a very large area and replacing it with seed. They sell seeding blankets that can help not only protect your soil from erosion, but also protect your seeds, keep them in place, and keep them from getting eaten by birds. And know that a lot of people enjoy planting. So if you're planting in a big area, you might as well make a party of it. Invite some friends, see if you can get some help from neighbors to just make the process a little bit less overwhelming. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Pollinator lawns. There are a lot of different nuances to installing a pollinator lawn and having the most success. So if you're interested in this project, I highly recommend you attend our pollinator lawns webinar, which will be hosted by James Wolfen from Twin City Seed. But just a really quick overview for this. If you have a very healthy lawn, you can do an overseeding method. And so what you will end up doing is mowing your grass as short as possible, and then raking away the clippings to expose as much soil as possible. Different packs have different seeding rates, so you'll want to check on that. But when you go to spread the seed, you can do it by hand. You can use a seed spreader. Just pay attention to what those seeding rates are, and check and see if you want to use any bulking agents like sand or compost, which can also just help make sure that your seed has good soil contact. One of the biggest challenges with starting a lawn is getting it to germinate. One of the biggest tips we can offer is keeping it moist until sprouting. That oftentimes means watering for short periods once a day, sometimes even twice a day if we're having really hot weather, just to make sure that those seeds are always moist. Once your lawn has fully germinated, you'll be able to cut back on watering, stop fertilizing the lawn, and move to a less intensive maintenance schedule. You may still want to mow your bee lawn. That's okay. We just highly recommend never again mowing below 3 inches. A part of that is because if you cut off too much of the growth, you end up just killing the lawn. Another part of that is that all of the flowers in bee lawn mixes are typically start blooming in that 3-inch range. So you don't want to cut them shorter than when they'll bloom, because otherwise you'll lose the point of having a bee lawn. You can trim your lawn in the fall. You won't need to use herbicides anymore. You won't want to use them anymore, because not only can they kill your lawn, but they can also do harm to our pollinators and our water quality. So be sure that you are dedicated to hand weeding your lawn. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Last thing, after you've prepped your site, you've done a really great job, you've got it going, maintaining your project is super important for making sure it's a success. So new plantings, we talk about native plants being really drought tolerant, not needing a lot of water input. That is mostly true once they are established. In the first 2 full growing seasons, you will want to make sure that your native plants are getting enough water to get them to establishment. So water at least once a week, or 1 inch per week for the first year. We do encourage doing that in longer time. So instead of watering a little bit every day, maybe you water 1/2 inch twice a week. That just encourages those roots to reach down deep into the soil to get all of the water as it infiltrates. Get out into your garden and pull weeds. Do it frequently if you can. Pull them while they're small. It is much easier to get weeds after you've watered or after it has rained, and it is very easy to get them when they are very small. Some weeds can grow an incredible root system very quickly, and then like in these pictures here on the bottom, instead of having a little tree sapling, you end up with a full weed tree on your hand that you need to have cut down. So get out into your garden, weed. The more frequently you can do it, also the more acquainted you become with your garden, and you'll see more of the pollinators as they're visiting and get to know some of those native plants that you planted. Keep your plantings clear of debris. That one's pretty common. People just don't like to see trash in your own garden, so most people can take care of that. But if you're planting something like a rain garden, that can really impact its functionality. And then replace mulch and plants as needed. gardening is always kind of an experiment. And so you might plant something that just doesn't thrive in that spot, might die out, and you need to replant it with something new. And just be open to that, open to the change of a garden. Hopefully over time the native plants will fill so that you're not having to mulch every year. But like we said, it's really important to keep large areas of bare soil covered with either plants or with mulch. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'll hand it back to Megan.
All right, thank you, Alexandra. So now we're going to cover some online resources that will be important for your project. So the main page on our website that will be most helpful to you throughout your grant period is the grantee guide. This is your main resource for program requirements, deadlines, and questions. It contains a step-by-step guide to completing and submitting your project. And it also has a project gallery so you can see examples of what previous participants have completed. And there's also a handy frequently asked questions section at the end. This is also the page where the recording of this webinar will be posted. So when in doubt, check on the grantee guide first for answers to your questions. The next most important resource you'll want to refer to is the eligible expenses guide, and this is linked on the grantee guide page. The eligible expenses guide explains what plants and materials are eligible for Lawns to Legumes reimbursement. So any items that are not on this list are not reimbursable under the Lawns to Legumes program. Be sure to review this guide before making purchases. And if you're ever unsure about something, you can email our helpline, which we'll be sharing later, and ask our program staff. And we'll be going over what the eligible expenses are in a bit more detail shortly. Another resource, which is also linked on the grantee guide, is the Lawns to Legumes native plant nurseries list. This is a directory where we've pulled together some native plant retailers from where you can buy your plants from. Shopping from these retailers is not required, but we do recommend it because these are all trusted locations with knowledgeable staff who can help you figure out which plants are reimbursable, which ones are native. If you don't see a nursery on our list that is near you, many do offer delivery, and that is indicated on the page, and delivery fees are a reimbursable expense. Next is the Hive, which is a community forum space that we have specifically for Lawns to Legumes participants. So we emailed the Hive to you when you filled out the confirmation form. So if you haven't filled out the confirmation form already, you'll get a link to this once you do that. This is similar to a social media platform, but it's a closed off space, and you can ask questions for staff. We also have some volunteer coaches who monitor this forum to answer your questions. And it's a great place to just get to know other Lawns to Legumes participants and share where you're at with your project. So Alexandra already mentioned these, but we're going to be putting on a couple of optional project webinars going more in detail on how to install a pollinator lawn, as well as how to install a pocket planting pollinator meadow or tree and shrub planting. We'll be sharing links to these via email. I believe we have already if you filled out the confirmation form. Monday, July 29 is the Pollinator Lawns webinar, and James Wolfen from Twin City Seed Company will be there to go over everything you need to know about creating a pollinator lawn. And then the next day, on Tuesday, July 30, we'll have a couple of staff from Metro Bloom's Design Build to go more in detail on installing the other project types. So be sure to go to one of those if you're wanting a little more extra guidance, and we'll be recording both of those as well if you can't make them. We also have a couple of additional pages on the Blue Thumb website that might be useful for you when planning your project. The first one here is the Blue Thumb resources page. This is a central hub that has plant lists, design templates, some other downloadable guides, and you can explore the tabs on that page to find resources relevant to your project type. Most of the resources are PDFs too, so if you'd like, you can save and print them. I want to highlight in particular the Planting for Pollinators design guide, which was created by the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources specifically for Lawns to Legumes participants. It's a very thorough and covers step-by-step planting and installation advice for each of the 4 project types that we covered today. Another page on the Blue Thumb website that can be useful is our Plan a Project page, which is located under that Learn tab. This offers, again, more step-by-step advice for planning, design, installation, and maintenance for a number of different project types. So that's another area that you might want to explore when deciding which project type will be right for you. And then the last page I'm going to preview for you all here is this is our workshops and online learning page, which is also located under that Learn tab. So if you'd like to take your learning about pollinator habitat to the next level, you can sign up for our free Resilient Yards online learning series. And that contains a number of different video-based courses that cover rain gardens, turf alternatives like pollinator lawns, seed saving, and shoreline plantings. Blue Thumb also puts on a number of in-person and virtual live workshops each spring and fall. We'll be hosting a few shorelines workshops if you happen to be doing a shoreline planting this fall. So you can check back at this page and see what events we have coming up. And fees associated with those workshops are a reimbursable Lawns to Legumes expense. I'm going to pass it on to Alexandra to talk about coaching.
Yeah, so one of the technical assistance kind of supports that we have is volunteer coaches who we can pair with interested grantees. So our coaches are often past Lawns to Legumes participants. As well as master gardeners, Minnesota water stewards. Sometimes we have staff members from across the state who work in natural resources that volunteer their time to work with you all. So it's a really great opportunity. But the one thing I always want to highlight is we cannot guarantee you will be matched with a coach. We have far fewer coaches than we have grantees. And so we encourage people who are especially new gardeners who maybe have never taken on a project like this before to utilize this resource. Whereas if you have some experience, look to some of the other resources we have, like using the Hive or emailing the helpline to answer one-off questions. All that to say, after this webinar, when we email out the recording, we will also be emailing out a kind of coach interest survey. It's just a sign-up form where you can tell us your level of experience with gardening and if you'd like to be matched with a coach. We are hoping to do that matching kind of mid-August. So you won't hear for a couple of weeks from your coach, but know that we're working on that on the back end. We do ask that you fill out that survey by August 2nd. If you fill it out afterwards or reach out to us afterwards, it's less likely we will have people available to help. So best chances are to fill that out sooner. When you are matched with a coach, we'll let you know by email, just so that you're aware that you were matched with someone and kind of be on the lookout either for an email from your coach, which is usually how they reach out first, or potentially like a phone call. Just expect to hear from them so that you're ready to talk with them. Our volunteer coaches typically will offer just a couple hours of their time, and what that looks like over the course of the grant period is maybe getting a chance to do a Zoom call with them or a phone call with them for a longer period of time early on while you are in the planning phases of your project. That's where they can be really helpful. And then following up with them if you have questions. One thing I will say that I hear from our coaches, though, is they do love to hear from their grantees. So maybe you only need to meet with them that one time at the beginning of the season, but they would love to hear when your project is successfully installed. So feel free to reach back out to them and just say, thank you, I did it. They love to see pictures of your completed projects. We can go to the next slide.
All right, I think it's back to me here. So after you have successfully completed your project, the final step will be to submit your reimbursement request. So let's go over what you'll be needing for that. The reimbursement request form is located on the Blue Thumb website under the Lawns to Legumes drop-down menu. You'll need to submit your reimbursement request after your project is fully installed. So after your plants or your seeds are on or in the ground. Again, you can be reimbursed up to a maximum of $400 in eligible expenses. Currently, the reimbursement request form is closed because we're still finishing up processing our spring group requests, but we open again in mid-August and you'll be notified by email when that happens. There are 4 main things that you'll need for filling out your reimbursement request. These include receipts, so itemized receipts from your project purchases, before and after photos of your pollinator habitat project, an approximate size of your project, so that can be in square feet or acres, and lastly, the number of hours that you spent planning and working on your project, as well as the total spending amount of your project. As I mentioned earlier, make sure to refer to the eligible expenses guide throughout the time working on your project. Please review this guide separately from here, but just to go over quickly some of the main reimbursable expenses. The Lawns to Legumes program can reimburse all Minnesota native plants, trees, shrubs, seeds, or bee lawn seed. We also reimburse other things that we've mentioned in this webinar, including mulch, compost, and edging materials. The program can reimburse delivery fees, as well as contractor fees if you have somebody helping with your project when it comes to installation or design. And then the program also can reimburse equipment rental. And then if you're doing specifically a container garden or a raised bed project, Lawns to Legumes can reimburse soil or materials for that project up to $100. Again, for a full list, please take a look at that guide. So a quick note on figuring out whether a plant is native to Minnesota. There are a few online tools that can help with that. 3 that we recommend are the Minnesota Wildflowers database. And this is just a really great, thorough site that contains information on many Minnesota native plants. In most cases, if a plant is not listed in the database, it is not native. Another database where you can view the native range and map of a plant is the USDA plants database. And then lastly, our very own Blue Thumb Plant Finder contains a bit over 300 native plants that are more commonly found in retailers. And there are a lot of handy filters you can use for trying to search for a list for plants that will do well on your specific project site. As mentioned earlier, cultivars, nativars, and hybrids are not reimbursable under the Lawns to Legumes program. There are a couple of exceptions to that, and those exceptions are listed in the eligible expenses guide. We have a handout that kind of gives you some practice and some more tips for telling apart native plants from cultivars. But we primarily recommend you shop from a nursery that either specializes in native plants or has staff who can help you tell the difference. Whenever in doubt, you can also email the L2L helpline. The email is l2lhelp@bluethumb.org. If you have a question about a specific plant and you're not sure whether it's a cultivar. So going over what we'll need in your receipts when you're submitting your reimbursement request, please note that Launch Legumes can only reimburse purchases made on or after the day you were awarded your grants, which was June 4, 2024, up till the project deadline, which is November 30. Make sure that your receipt, whether it's physical or digital, or your invoice is legible, it's readable, and it shows key details, including the date of the purchase, the retailer name, the item names, and the total of the purchase, as we'll need all of that information to review your request. And then if you have a receipt where you're only requesting reimbursement for some of the purchases, you can just circle or highlight those purchases that you are requesting reimbursement for. Ideally, your receipt will be itemized, so it'll show the name of each item that you purchased. But if you end up with a receipt that doesn't show the names of the plants or the materials you purchased, we ask that you also either submit a photo of your plant tags or a written out, typed out list of the plant names that were purchased, just so that we can verify that they're all eligible expenses. Moving on to those before and after photos, we just need like 1 to 4 shots for both the before and after. And if you can, try to get them from far away enough to establish some context of the project area. It's also nice if you can take a photo from a similar vantage before and after the project, so that it's easy to tell it's from the same location. And then do not worry if your project isn't, quote, beautiful yet. Whether you just put seeds on the ground and there's not really anything to visually see, or if you just have the little plugs, that's okay. We just need to see that the components of your project that you're asking reimbursement for are there. And then you'll also be sharing the amount of time spent on your project. For time, you're expected to spend at least 2 hours of time in your project. That is considered the match portion of this grant. Your time can include time spent watching this webinar, other webinars, and planning, and then we'll just need that total number of hours. And then for spending, make sure that you're tracking the total expenses spent on your project. And that includes any expenses made beyond that $400 maximum if you end up spending more than that. And that will help us demonstrate the outcomes of the Launch Legumes program, even if you went above and beyond. There's some other Launch Legumes commitments that you checked off when you filled out your confirmation form, if you did that already. And these are actions that are strongly encouraged, but they're not necessarily items we review for reimbursement. And that includes sourcing your native plants from as close to your location as you can. We say typically around 175 miles, just to ensure that they're local to your ecoregion and helping out pollinators that are native to the area to the best extent possible. If you can't source them from close enough, that's okay. If you need to do delivery, for example, from one of those retailers on our list. If you can, please try to verify that your plants are free from neonicotinoids and other systemic pesticides. which are very harmful for pollinators. It's something that you can easily ask at whatever nursery or retailer that you are shopping from. If you can, we ask that you do not apply pesticide and herbicide to your project site, as this can also harm pollinators. We understand that in some cases, select application might be necessary for site prep, but just minimizing that as much as you can. And lastly, following through with project maintenance. So making sure that you're doing that weeding and watering so that you can help your new plants successfully establish. And now I'm going to pass it on to Alexandra to review our project timeline and give some final reminders.
Yeah, so we can just go ahead and jump straight to the next slide, Megan. We've gone over all of these dates, but just want to give you one more chance to see them all in one place. We'll send out reminder emails with these as well, but we'll have the follow-up Q&A session to this webinar next Tuesday, and then we'll have the Pollinator Project webinars in the following week. The deadline to confirm your grant is July 31st. So if you haven't done that already, please do so. And then just know that you can start planning and doing site prep now, and think about where you're going to source your plants from, getting prepared for all of that so that you can plant your plants in, with a great plan in place. The project deadline is November 30th. And like we said, once you get that reimbursement submission in, we will send you a Lawns to Legumes yard sign to put in your yard. All of our webinars will be recorded and emailed. So if you can't make any of these dates, we will be able to forward those on to you for a recording to watch. We'll go to the next slide, which just plugs the Q&A session one more time. We'll take all of the Q&A questions from this webinar today that were submitted, and we'll go through them and answer some of them live next week. If you are watching this recording later, or you're here live and think of a question later, you can go ahead and email that to the L2L helpline, and we'll add that to our list to answer. Just do remember to check the frequently asked questions section at the bottom of our grantee guide. We get a lot of the same questions every year, and we try to have answers to those always accessible. So that's a really great place to check out. We'll go to the next slide, which just reminds you that when in doubt and any time throughout this grant process, be sure to check out the grantee guide. We put that together as a step-by-step guide to get you successfully through one of these projects. So it's a really great place to look and to connect you to the most important and most used resources that we have. You can check out the Hive. Please do join us there. That community really ends up being what we kind of make of it together. So use that space to share about your project, ask questions, and just get advice from other project participants as well as coaches and staff. And then finally, if you have program specific questions, you can always email us at l2lhelp@bluethumb.org. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm sorry we went a few minutes over, but we are really looking forward to seeing what kind of plantings you accomplish this fall, and we are here to help. So we'll see you at the next webinar, the Q&A session next week, and otherwise, good luck on your project.